Ipsos Rusya Müşteri İlişkileri Direktörü Rimantas Reimontas'ı davet ediyoruz şimdi de.
Hello, everyone. You know what? I was just standing there looking at you and thinking, God, we talk a lot about resilience today, but you are the most resilient crowd. You've spent 5 hours, have you noticed that? 5 hours sitting here, and you refuse to leave. I'm just incredible. Okay, nevertheless, I'll try to be on time. I have a timer there, which says that I have 19 minutes and a half. So, anyhow, I'm going to talk about crisis in Russia. In a way, you guys are in a similar situation because I'm going to talk about 2014 and 15. That's kind of the first and the second year when the crisis, the last crisis, because there were a lot of crises in Russia. So when the last crisis started, and I think you are kind of where we were 4 or 5 years ago. Right, so first of all, a very quick chart about the full colors of crisis. So what happened? We were really hit hard in 2015. So the GDP dropped by 2.5%, which is not a lot probably when you compare it to Venezuela, especially on the inflation rate. But given the world has grown by 2.9%, that's the directly opposite trend where Russia went. Then inflation reached 15.5%, which is the highest rate of inflation for a decade. It's better now, by the way. Retail turnover dropped, real wages dropped by nearly 10%, gross national income dropped by nearly 20%, and imports and exports also shrunk by a third. So that's what happened in 2015 versus 14. What I'm going to talk to you about today is actually how did consumers react to what was happening, and the second part of my presentation will be, well, all case studies. So all cases, how did the brands react? And you know, when I was thinking before this presentation,
You're sick.
When our Webster's Turkey colleagues asked me to participate, I thought I'd take any brands which is on the market and I could create a case study because a lot of brands had to rethink their strategies. But I picked 5. So for those who will be bored, just look at the slides and they will be numbered. Right, consumers. So 2014 and 15, there was a range of emotions expressed by the Russian consumers. Some of them are just angry. Some of them were anxious. What happens next? You know, I had one colleague of mine who was very emotional, and he walked up to me one day and he said, "Did you see the exchange rate for euro today?" I said, "Yes." "Why are you so calm?" "Well, what can I do? It's the ratio, right?" Some people were just irritated. They were saying that the producers are going to use the situation for their own profit, for their own benefit. Some of them were patriotic. So they were saying, you know, because 2014 was, I'm not sure if you're aware, but that's when the Western countries imposed sanctions on Russia. And as a countermeasure, Russia actually imposed a product embargo. So there's no Parmesan, Italian Parmesan in Russia. There's no dairy, there's no this and that and that and that. So a lot of product categories were just banned. So some of the people are saying it's good for us, it's good for the country because local producers, local companies, local brands will actually emerge stronger after the crisis. And some were optimistic. Well, Russians have seen a crisis every 5 to 7 years in the past quarter of the century. So it was in 93, 98, then it was 2008, and then 2014, 15. So no, the Russians are generally quite used to having a crisis. They're like, okay, there's another crisis, well, that's fine, we'll survive. And being a researcher, of course, I wanted to include some charts with numbers. So Cliff, thank you for showing some charts with numbers as well. I was thinking, well, maybe I will be the only one. Anyhow, we have this study where we ask people various questions on a regular basis. It's a syndicated study. And the question which we asked, and the results you can see here, if you don't see the numbers, don't worry, just look at the curve. Thinking about the last month, what did you save on? What categories did you save on? And just looking by the curve, so by the way, I included 2009 and 10 because that was the previous crisis, just the numbers for you to kind of refer to. In 2014, at the end of 2014, and especially in 2015, people started saving on everything, literally on everything, be it durables or services or FMCG, foods, anything. A lot of people realize that they are earning less and their product prices are actually up. An interesting fact is that in 2014 and 15, this is when we started noticing that the one curve, one line is correlating with another one. And that red line is, we ask a question, which of the events do you consider important? So 59% said that the crisis in Russia, 70%, whatever. And it correlates very well with the rate of euro and dollar. So Russian people are really like hard currency. I'm not sure how about Turkey, but yeah, in Russia, everything is like, yeah, dollars and euros. Anyhow, so when the crisis hits, people stopped going on automatic mode. Usually, well, I'm not a Russian, by the way, but I consider myself, I would go to a shop, and I would just go to the shelf, just pick something, put it in a basket, and that was it. I didn't think about the price or other products on the shelf. I would just go to take my familiar yogurt and put it in a basket. But what happened in 2014 and 15? Some of the products disappeared completely from the shelf. Like I mentioned, Parmesan or Lithuanian dairy products, they were quite popular in Russia. They disappeared altogether, none. Nada. And people started to think, okay, I need to replace them. Another thing happened. Well, the milk that I used to buy is actually now more expensive, whatever, 50% more expensive. What do I do? So people started noticing. They entered the manual mode. And they had to enter that manual mode because they had to select the products which were either affordable or they could find them on the shelf. So thinking about the strategies that they actually employed, if the category wasn't important for them, I don't know, TV set, maybe, and if they weren't loyal to the brand in the category, they just denied the category. They didn't buy it, or they delayed. Hold on, yeah. If the category was important for them, for example, baby nappies, and we saw that from our results, they just switched to more affordable brands. If the category was not very important, but they were loyal to the brand, they would go to another shop and buy less, but they still continue buying the same brand. Or, if the category is important and they're loyal, they just switch a purchase channel. So, very quickly, some of the specific saving strategies, it's more related to FMCG, so I'm sorry if there are any representing non-FMCG companies, but switching to cheaper trade channels, discounters and hypermarkets, people started saving on that. They started monitoring prices and choosing the best one. By the way, it's not a joke, but I know for sure from our research that a lot of people in a non-FMCG category, TV sets, they would go to a shop, to a mortar and brick, they would find the model that was of interest to them, and they would wait for months for it to be on discount. So they're happy to wait, unless they can buy it cheaper. Down trading, switching to cheaper brands, including private labels, and we will talk, one of my cases that I will show later on will be about actually private labels. Buying products on discounts or larger pack, it's another strategy. Use purchase lists, limiting spontaneous purchases. So yeah, they were quite strict. Okay, I'm going just for yogurt. I'm not going to buy another bottle of wine. Buying less, so less frequently or less variety. And giving up someone buying certain product categories. So just what I mentioned on the previous slide, they stopped altogether. Anyhow, I have 10 minutes left. What did brands do? So that's going to be those 5 case studies that I mentioned. Do you have in Turkey Leroy and OB? Used to. Okay. Well, in Russia, these used to be the most popular ones. So Leroy is a French company. Obi is a German company. So what happened in 2014 and 15? Leroy, they realized straight away that what this crisis means is that consumers don't have enough money to buy what they sell. And they were retailers who sold everything for the house, starting from bricks and woods and finishing, chandeliers, etc. So what they did, they started communicating affordability in terms of prices. So affordable prices, that's straight away what they did. I have a TV ad from 2015. Hopefully it will work.
Спасите! Там оно!
Это не оно, а старое окно. Страшно? Так поменяем.
А может, наконец-то и дом покрасим?
Благодаря нашим низким ценам вы сможете и дом отремонтировать, и сад обновить.
Был дом с привидениями, теперь с новыми качелями!
Леруа Мерлен. Бесспорно низкие цены.
So they started communicating affordability and low prices. What did OBI did actually? Until 2016, they were still communicating what they've been communicating, purely product range. And then what we realized in 2016, oh God, we're losing share, we're losing money. So they tried to communicate affordability. I'm not sure how many of you understand Russian, but nevertheless, what they're saying on this chart is, on the side, sorry, open the benefit for yourself, and OBI, Dacia, this affordable, whatever. But what they did in 2016 was too late, because they've already lost the consumers. Some of them went to Leroy because Leroy was openly saying, yeah, we're cheap, so come and buy us. Another share of consumers, they already haven't had money to buy something for their houses. So in 2016, Leroy went up by nearly 21% in value. Obi dropped by 10%. Can you just feel the scale? Yeah, plus 20, minus 10. So the learning for us, and I think Alex was very explicit with examples from LATAM, adapt to changing consumer and changing marketplace. That's what Leroy did, and they succeeded. They are the biggest retailer now in Russia, the DIY retailer. Right, the second one is food retail. In 2014, the share of discounted products was 43% in hypermarkets, supermarkets, so big modern retail, 43%. In 2017, it was 65%. So people got used to having a discount. But what happened is that when producers realized that they can sell only on discount, and they wanted to take back that strategy, they couldn't, because the consumers already switched to other ways of surviving. So for example, this is a real case. The juice category in Russia, and juice category is dropping in Russia significantly. People started just making their own home juice, compotes, that's how they call it in Russia. So they lost the consumers, and they don't know how to make it come back. Again, if I heard you correctly, it's up to 90% products on sale in LATAM. So we probably know the figure where we're headed, but I hope that 65 will stay there for a while at least. Right, case number 3, don't rely on brand equity and your brand love and loyalty during crisis. So Coca-Cola, that's real prices, 50 to 60 rubles, it's approximately $1 per bottle. And that's a local produced carbonated drink. It's called Duchesse. And it's half the price. The brand love and loyalty to Coca-Cola is extremely high. It used to be very high. But when the crisis hit, because the carbonated drinks are not the first necessity product, they started losing market share. The sales went down. Because what people did, they voted using ruble. Yeah, I love you, but I'll spend my rubles with another brand. So that's happened with Coke. Just take a closer look. This bottle even though it's affordable and probably not of the best quality, but it has all the necessary claims. It has the quality claim, this stamp at the top of the label. Actually, it stands for GOST, and it's the Soviet-era standardization system. So everything was standard in Soviet time. So they put that for the sake of, yeah, that's, you know, that's quality. That's no preservatives, so naturality claim. Yeah, it's natural. It says without preservatives. It has credentials, all the medals, all the awards that they received during various exhibitions. And they say good old traditions. So they're just tapping into those who long for the USSR and remember those old good times. So they have all the claims to lure in the consumer to buy them. And they have affordable price. And these guys are growing. Right. HoReCa. Eating out, so going to restaurants and cafes in Moscow, dropped by 30% in 2015. And, well, this stopped going out because they were cash-strapped, they didn't have enough money. Some of the restaurants actually closed because there weren't enough food to buy on the market. Like I mentioned, Parmesan just disappeared altogether. And also the rent prices increased because before recently, and especially in 2015, nearly everything that the companies rented in terms of real estate was priced in dollars. And because the ruble has devalued, the rents became really, really expensive. So a lot of restaurants went out of business. But actually, well, as an opportunity for certain categories, even in crisis. Surprise, surprise, tea sales went up by 19%, 19.4% by value that year in 2015. Because you know what? People stopped going to the cafes, to the restaurants, so they decided, why not to have tea in my kitchen with my family? So, like you said, crisis is actually two things. It's danger and opportunity. Danger for one thing, opportunity for tea. And the last one, the Miratorg. Sorry, it says in Russia, but it's a company called Miratorg. It used to be an average meat processor in the country. Now it's the biggest one. So that's their story in 2 minutes, in a 2-minute story. How they became the number one. They used to be, just as I mentioned, an average meat processor. They didn't have their own farms. They were buying local meats and producing steaks, and mostly steaks and some meat products. And I'm a big steak eater, actually. I like steaks. I could eat them every day. And I was buying them. But the quality was so inconsistent that at some point I stopped buying them. And that was 2014-15. And what they realized that, well, we probably need to build a brand, because before Miratorg, there wasn't a brand of meat in Russia. There's nothing. You go to the shelf of meat, you buy something that is on the shelf, and you don't even think, what's the company? So before they started building a brand, what they did, they fixed the basics. They bought the Black Angus bulls, a lot of them, brought to Russia, bought a farm, allowed bulls to do the job. So, you know, there were more of them. And then they thought of a product. So that's how the product looks now. The quality is consistent, the product looks fine, the communication they're launching is down to the point, they touch all the right points. And after that, they thought, well, okay, so we bought the right bulls, we thought of the packaging, thought about consumers' needs, why not to go into adjacent categories? So they started producing other meat sub-products, including ready-made meals. That's on the far end, or the far right. Then, they didn't stop there. They opened the chains of burgers. So there's a burger joints in Moscow so far, but there are 8 of them already, and that's in 2 years. And they haven't stopped there as well. They launched an online shop. Well, online is everywhere, so they thought, well, why not? You can buy over 400 pieces of different meats online. And that went on only in 2018, so that's a year ago. So that's Miratorg. I'm just finishing up. Has it finished yet? Are we out of the crisis? Well, crisis, so that's the label, the title of their article says, crisis has become familiar. It's in a way like a unwelcome neighbor. It lives next to you, you don't like it, but you can't do anything to get rid of it. So you just kind of try to live together. That's how Russians treat crisis. It's there, what can you do? Nothing. So let's leave it. This article is actually quite recent. It's 2 weeks ago that I read, and I thought when I was preparing for this conference, I thought maybe it's important to say. The important bit is here, the last quote. That's a social institute that run some sort of research. And what they're saying that we entered the trajectory of survival. And when I say the trajectory of survival, remember the chart that I showed. The consumers are still cash-strapped. They are still saving on a lot of categories. And actually, I just read some new data last week that 60% of Russians are saving every day on food. So more than half of the country don't have enough food to put on the table. They're not starving, but they're forced to save. So it's not that the crisis is over, it's just that the Russians probably just accepted that this is the new reality, and they live with it. But I hope that in 20 years, in the next 10 years, Sidar will invite us and I will talk about economic miracle in Russia. Thank you very much.